You made me sound so cool. Hi, everyone. Where's my presentation? There it is. My name is Nina Shariati. Thank you all for having me here. With me, I have a cheating note. I have a couple of numbers with data. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm just going to park it here in case you're wondering what that is. To start with, future. When you hear the word future, what do you think about? Before we start this exercise, I want to ask you a question. How many people in this room are born after 1982? After. I have no comments. How many people were born after 92? So zero representation from Generation Z. Oh, we have one person. Welcome. Okay, let's start with an exercise. Can you all please close your eyes for a second? I want you to imagine your vision of future. Can you see it? Can you see who's there with you? Can you see what you're doing? Can you see what the weather is like? Okay, I want you to open up your eyes right now, and I want you to hold on to that feeling or vision throughout this session. When we're talking about future in general in the big world today, there is a clear division of what people are envisioning our future to be. There's this one, a very dystopic vision that robots and tech and innovation will ruin us all. We are going to be enslaved by robots. They will take over. They will realize that their purpose is to create efficiency, and there's nothing more inefficient than human beings. We are also afraid that we will start using tech against us in terms of social rankings. Have you been smiling today? No? Then you get 2 points. Have you been polite? Then it's 4 points. This is actually happening in China today. So we are not that far away for this becoming a reality. And just a quick question, how many people get this reference? Yeah, so millennials. Black Mirror, yeah. At the same time, the interesting part about the vision of future, at the same time, parallel to this very dystopic vision, you have this vision, very optimistic vision, that tech will enable us in ways we didn't thought was possible. We have a huge opportunity to challenge some of our greatest challenges that we didn't know how to tackle before. Again, tech will enable us to live our best lives in the way we didn't think it was possible. Even down to downloading our brains into a computer and living the life that we always dreamt of forever and ever with whoever we wanted to. But the reality is that when looking at future, it's very difficult to see what it actually will entitle. But there are a few things that we know of. So what is the current state? This is our planet. This is our home. And according to UN, we are supposed to become around 8.5 billion people by 2030. We are currently 7.8 billion. And just to give you an idea of what we are talking about in terms of numbers, at 1900, we were 1.6 billion. So from what is that? Within like 120 years, we have gone from 1.6 billion to 8.5 billion. Can you imagine that? And I want to add on to that by 2030, it is predicted that the middle class will grow with another 3 billion people, growing from current 2 billion to a total 5 billion. Here we're talking about people who will have the same needs. They will want to eat the same things. They will want to dress the same way. They will need shelter in the same way as many of us today are doing. I can see it like the opportunist here thinking about, we are talking about opportunities, we are talking about economical growth. How can I tap into that, right? But the reality is the way we are doing business today, we will need to have 2 of these planets by 2030 to actually address the needs of 8.5 billion people. And even though there are some politicians out there believing that we could easily move to Mars and settle down there and solve the problem, this is our plan. This is where we should be. This is our best home. Nowhere else in the world we will have the same habitants, perfect state that this planet has given us. And another shocking factor is that if we will continue with the same system, same approach, same businesses as usual, by 2050, we will need 3 of them. That equation doesn't really match up. It doesn't add up, right? So something needs to change. So this is a graph to show you what we're talking about in terms of industry and CO2 emission right now. And currently, fashion apparel industry is recognized to be standing for 10% of it. And according to World Economic Forum, it's also known that fashion industry is the 2nd largest polluter after oil. That's a lot. There are some arguments against this, but there are a few things that we know of which actually, we don't need it to be the 2nd polluter or the 1st polluter. We know that the industry is not the best. We know it's a dirty, dirty industry. And just to give you some ideas, is that 30% of the stock annually is never sold. So from everything that we are producing every year, 30% of it is never sold. And 50% of the stock, I'm talking about fashion industry, 50% of it is thrown away within a year. And here we're talking about, here I need my notes, 92 million tons of textiles thrown away annually, globally. It stands for 12 kgs per person, globally, annually. They're massive numbers. So something needs to be changed, something needs to be done, because we can't continue this way. So the effects of us becoming more people, becoming richer people, and the way that we have been doing business previous until now, and the same way as currently heading towards, has left us with certain effects. One of it is climate change, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. Is there anyone in this room who claims they don't believe in climate change? Raise of hands. I dare you. So this is happening. This is facts. Ever since we have been recognizing it and been measuring, we have seen that the temperatures have been rising due to the level of greenhouse emission that has been put into the atmosphere due to industries, due to human beings. It has left us with burning Amazon. It has left us with desertification. It has left us with extreme weathers globally. And in Sweden, where I'm from, this year, our highest mountaintop was not the highest one anymore because we lost 4 meters of ice on top of that one. So this is affecting us everywhere. The increased temperatures are also causing oceans, ice is melting and oceans are rising. And according to UN High Commission of Refugees, they are predicting that due to these extreme climates and also oceans that are rising, we are talking about around 220 million to 1 billion refugees. And the funny part is that the refugees that we are talking about are going to be coming from areas where the majority of the urbanization is taking place. We are talking about the top largest cities in the world. We are talking about China, Shanghai. We are talking about India. We are talking about Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh. And for anyone who is within the textile industry, we all know that's where we are producing our stuff. We are totally independent on China, Bangladesh, India. But also, these areas are also where majority of companies are seeing as potential investment in terms of expansion of sales. If you have growing middle class in these markets, then there's a high potential to invest in those markets. But how is that equation is going to come together if all these cities are also the cities that will be mostly affected by climate change and the increased sea levels? This is just an image from Philippines. This is happening today. So when we're talking about sustainability and climate change, I'm sure you have all noticed that there is a movement going on. More and more companies are starting to talk about their sustainability strategies, their bold goals. So what are the drivers of these changes? One of it is simply the scarcity. Again, if you go back to us becoming more people on the same planet with additional less space due to increased sea levels, it would mean that we have actually less land to grow cotton on. So there's a huge scarcity that is driving this change, these strategic changes within companies, within businesses. And according to, and there's a prediction that by 2030, the fashion industry will lose 52 billion in revenues due to the increased wages, but also lack of resources. Another change is like legislations. We are seeing a lot of conversation happening around legislations in EU, but also in China. In EU, we have an example where we're talking about a banning of the single use of plastic, which I'm sure a lot of you know about it. But at the same time, in Shanghai, 2018, they enforced a new regulation that makes it illegal to not recycle your trash. It goes, and this is in Shanghai, I need to clarify. In Shanghai, they enforce this. So if you don't recycle your trash as a citizen or a company, you will face a fine. And they're also discussing to add the whole social ranking part into this legislation. So, and many more are already being discussed in EU level right now, but also in national levels. Who knows this person? Few? Greta Thunberg. There is another movement that is actually standing for a lot of the changes that are happening and that is the citizen awakening, with Greta Thunberg being one of the leading images in the forefront, making a lot of younger generation aware of the crisis that they are standing in front of and the lack of actions that actually will help their future. And this citizen awakening, it comes with information, with knowledge, but it's also leading to an activism approach to this, which is very much reminding us at the era during the 70s, where there were a lot of demonstrations, there were a lot of activism. And Jane Fonda, I don't know if you know about this, but she was one of the leading persons as an activist back in the 70s. She was arrested just last week in the US because she was trying to get the new Green Deal through. So there is a lot of activism going on in this arena. It is super interesting because we are talking about Gen Z, and they're going to become our largest source of economy. They will become the biggest generation ever in our history. And they are very skeptical to businesses. And also, on top of it, they're putting values on top. So they're more likely to pick a brand that corresponds with their values instead of just the price. And we can see this already in graphs. This is from a Google search, where we can see that the search for sustainable products are increasing and search for cheap products are decreasing. And if we would dig this down to specific countries, such as Germany, this would look very different. It will be much more divided. Another area when it comes to a citizen awakening that I personally find very interesting is in connection to trust. And this is a slide that I took from Edelman's barometer, trust barometer. And if you go back a couple of years, you can see that the trust has been high on NGOs, or it's been very high on academia. But this year, something happened. From nowhere came my employer. And when they started digging into this, it showed that the trust is moving from being something distant to something close by, something in my reach, something I can control of. And who can I influence, impact, control is my employer. I have that power to decide where I work. And I need my CEO to take certain decisions. They need to show what their values are. And if they don't, I'm going to make sure they realize where I stand. Again, this activism approach is coming up. This is super interesting. Another area where is the changes, we see this change towards sustainability approach is fourth industrial revolution, where tech is actually helping us enable and tackle some of the challenges that we didn't think it was possible. And I will come back more to this in a couple of more examples. So what is the solution? The solution is identified that we need to make a proper systematic shift from a linear one to a circular one. So what is a linear system? I'm sure a lot of you know about it, but I'm just going to walk through it with you quickly. So linear is basically you have an idea, you design a product, you mass produce it, you sell it. When the customer is done with it, they throw it away. And here we are talking about a $400 billion worth of revenue that is being thrown away. A circular economy is saying, you know what? Let's close this loop. Let's start at the design state, think about how we can bring back that product into the system so that either we prolong the lifetime of that product, or we sell it to someone else who wants it, or we recycle it to a new product. But we close the loop, and we don't see the end product as trash, we see it as an asset. And by doing this, we will reduce our CO2 emission drastically. And here I have another curiosa, another interesting number, which is if we actually could address both our environmental and social challenges that we are foreseeing, we are talking about $192 billion worth of extra revenue going back into the business by 2030. So here we're talking about an opportunity. Anyone who's business-orientated or innovative sees how, if by trying to find those solutions, by finding those gaps, you could actually make money, and doing it for a good cause. So what is the role of tech here? And it's actually quite simple. The role of tech is that it will enable. Tech is an enabler, and it will also enable the circular economy. And one of the emerging techs that actually could support in this is IoT, Internet of Things, where we are talking about how two products can talk to each other without interference of a human being. And this could be applied into sustainability in terms of tracking, tracing, creating transparency through your value chain. But it could also be used in terms of communicating towards the customer in the way that they need to have the information. For instance, where was this product made? Who made it? What's in it? What kind of chemicals were used in it? With the help of IoT, this could be a future. Another one is AI. With the upcoming of AI, we could actually use this technology, use this big data to actually predict what the customer needs. Remember, 30% of the garments are never sold, the stock that is never sold. Imagine if we could predict what the customer wants and needs in a way that we could reduce those 30% and create a more accurate collection. That's just one example. This could be used in many other ways as well. Another area is robotics. Anyone who's been into garment manufacturing, they will see that the technologies have been improved, but it's not a massive change from spinning jennies or the first sewing machines. We don't see the same innovative approach towards textile industry that we did towards car industry, for instance. And one big reason behind it is low labor cost. And with rise of new technology and robotics, we have seen new technologies that actually sew garments much faster, really accurate. And this could be applied in terms of connecting AI with these machines and having a close, nearby manufacturing station where you can actually produce based on customer demand. "5G is another one. So basically, we are using 4G right now, and 5G's promise, and it's not just a promise, it's tested and it's shown that it works, that it will have an extreme, it will be so much faster. That's one of the drivers. It will be faster and it will be accurate. in ways that 4G is not providing currently. So what are we talking about? We are talking about downloading a series that will take 6 minutes on 4G to the same series downloaded within 3 seconds. So imagine when you have this in place, and you have IoTs, and you have AIs, and you have robotics. Then you could actually sit in Bangladesh, put on a pair of VR glasses, and sew a garment virtually in Bangladesh, and it's happening in Sweden. That could be a potential future. And with the 5G we are talking about, within 5 years, it should have a global reach. Are you with me so far? Are you bored? Does it make sense? How much time do I have? Yeah, okay. But with all these new innovations and all the conversations that are happening out there, there's an important aspect that is not to be left unaddressed or unthought of. Ethics. What is our approach towards ethics when we're talking about these new powerful technologies? Who is in charge of our values? How are we going to make sure that these AIs, robotics, share the same values as we are doing? Just think about it for a second and go back to yourself. Who taught you your ethics and your values? And how can you teach that to someone? If we have self-driving cars, for instance, how is this car going to know in a point of accident to prioritize the person that is going to be run over, maybe a child, or protecting the people sitting in the car? And when I was doing this research, I found out that all the ads that you're seeing on Facebook, there's 50 people plus a massive super algorithm that is in charge of it. Who are these people? Who are these 50 people? What are their ethics? How are they making sure that this algorithm is not being used in an unethical way? When we're talking about the robotics, how are we making sure that countries such as Bangladesh or India are not left with no income or need for workforce? These are super important questions, and we need to start thinking about them now, and we need to find a way to address them now, because I'm sure that you know about all the writings about how Google is using your data, how Facebook is using your data, how presidential elections are being affected. But then whose responsibility is it? Is it governments? Do they know? Is it big corporates? Which I would say there is a big responsibility with big corporates. They need to start looking at their social responsibility in a totally new way, taking all these questions in consideration. So there is a huge responsibility in moving forwards. But bottom line is that we are talking about our future. We are talking about our survival. We are talking about our vision of that future that you have had. So it is all of our responsibility to make sure that the developments that are happening in line with either making sure your visions are coming to truth, or if you're a more pessimistic person, that they are not becoming true. So end of the day, it's all of our responsibility. And together we are many, and with many comes big power. And with great power comes big responsibility. So I want to leave you with those thoughts, and I want you to take that with you back to your organization and try and figure out how can you help driving that change with whatever steps you can do to create that future vision that you're dreaming of. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Have a seat. We'll have some questions. Any questions from the audience? Just a second, my colleague will get you a mic.
Good morning, everybody. Yvonne Heinen is my name, Gerber Technology. Thank you for all the food for thought with your excellent presentation. Provocative question. If I'm doing robotic sewing in Sweden, why would I stand in Bangladesh?
That's a relevant question, and those are the questions that we need to address.
In other words, the refugee problem is hitting us with more automation in any case anyway. That should be added to the list of to-dos and things to be considered.
Yeah. I think there's
and the ethical
there's a definitely ethical question there, but it could also be that sometimes a legislation needs to come into place and address that, but sometimes within the change you can also find a new solution that could help you in that direction as well. And that's something that is hard for me to answer right now, but I think we need to be aware of those situations so we don't end up leaving certain people behind. Because what history is telling us, that if you leave certain people behind, they're never gone forever. It will come back in one way or another. So that, for example, one important aspect of it is the polarization, that's really badly pronounced, within the political arena, where people who have been left behind within globalization are actually becoming more in numbers, and they are voting in a certain way, which is not very good for our future. So I don't have a yes or no answer to it, but I think definitely it needs to be discussed.
So we agreed that the complexity is even higher than we thought, and we better get started now because there's a lot to do. Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, so I do have some questions for you, Nina. You talked about some of the technologies like robotics and AI, but do you have like actual examples of these emerging technologies being used to overcome sustainability? Like if you can share some examples here.
For instance, let me see, which one should I pick? I mean, for instance, there are companies that are starting to look at big data in how to predict what the customers want and produce based on that. Fashion Nova is one of them, where they are using, please take that with a pinch of salt. I think they're scanning influencers and Instagram and see who have liked what and use that kind of data to create their assortment. So that's one example. Yeah.
Okay. And yesterday we talked about some examples of using blockchain technology for traceability. How do you see traceability fitting in well with the whole circular economy concept?
I mean, traceability is essential to enable circularity. So if you're in the end of a life cycle, need to bring something back into the cycle, you kind of need to know what's in it and how it's produced and what kind of chemicals. So this traceability and the data, that it becomes very important from that aspect, but transparency and traceability in terms of addressing human rights are also super important. First, you need to know what's happening where and within your supply chain to actually being able to address it. To connecting back to blockchain, I've been talking about blockchain previously, but I chose not to do that this time. And the reason behind it is because it has become a bit trendy, and people like to connect it with various things. And what blockchain is great for is when you can have like an open platform, everyone is putting in the data and it's verified data and it can't be tweaked or changed. And but a lot of these examples of blockchain, it's very like one company is using blockchain for their own sake, and I don't see the purpose of that. But I can see how a bigger platform used by many different brands to ensure that the information put in there are accurate and verified. The thing is with blockchain is that even if you get the information in the system, it's not automatically verified or it needs to be correct information. So there's a big work behind the process of how you collect data, what type of data you collect, and how is that accurate. It needs to be the foundation of it. And blockchain is actually very energy consuming as well. So again, if it's a new technology, could it have potential of putting more harm in terms of creating more CO2 emission?
So what's your top pick on traceability? Which technology would you go with?
To be frank, I think we first need to be aware of, just because you have a technology, it doesn't mean that you have the traceability. You still need to make sure you know your vendors. And you need to, so there's, I would say there's a bigger work needs to be done to actually map out the supply chain. And when you have that, ideally, in a dream scenario, there will be a global platform where all these information go into. Similar to internet, then it could make sense.
Mm-hmm. We've got a question there.
Hi, I'm Rajita from MS Holdings. So my question is so we talked about a lot the circularity and implementing the systems and showcasing what we are doing and support to that cause. But from my perspective, I have been working with several big brands. But actually, even though they are talking about it, at a certain level, they are not trying to actually implement it, due to the cost and some problems. So my question is, even though the Gen Z doesn't have much buying power at the moment, do we have the certain technologies and the platforms to showcase that exact value is added in terms of the sustainability approach to current customers?
So your question is if there is a technology that could help inform Gen Z about the sustainability impact?
No, actually, my idea is Gen Z is not up to that level that they can buy stuff and directly impact to the economy.
Yeah.
For the major customers, the consumers that we have right now, do we have a platform and our approach to showcase that we are doing things correctly? Is that system is available, or are we just lagging behind?
Okay. one of the big challenges within sustainability, at least within fashion industry, is that how do you measure sustainability? When you pay for something, you have that price, right? You know exactly what it stands for. But currently, there is not one for measuring sustainability. There are organizations out there who are looking into it to try and create it. Sustainable Apparel Coalition and Higg Index is looking into that, where they're trying to find measurements, holistic measurement system to measure sustainability on facility level, on brand level, and on product level. So when you have that type of system in place, that would make it much easier for any brand to build goals, but also communication plans around it to help support customers understand how that purchase is actually feeding into, for instance, climate change. So the answer in short is no, we don't have a system. Yeah. Can I just add one more thing about blockchain? I just want to make sure that it's clear. I don't think that we shouldn't test it, look into it, and see how that fits. I think we need to be better at trying to test things much faster to get a better understanding of the technology before scaling it up. So please don't go back and remove all your blockchain investments. That's not my message here.
And we have another question here.
Hello. My question is that circularity and circular economy is a buzzword today. But when we try to use recycled material, for example, recycled polyester, just because of traceability and transparency, its cost goes higher. So this increased price only on context of sustainability, neither customer is willing to pay nor some of the global retailers also. So overall, because of this increase in cost, these efforts get a pushback. So what's the solution for that? Because everybody is aware, circularity is talked about a lot, but when it comes to the implementation, because of the increased cost only because of traceability and transparency, it gets a jolt.
I think that's a very valid and great question, but the thing is that the state today is that a lot of brands are aware that this is coming, but at the same time there's a cost connected to it, and some of them, they don't, they look at here and now, right? They have their quarterly profit, and they don't want to they don't want to create a bigger challenge for themselves when they're competing with other brands. So there is a challenge for a lot of brands when they understand this is coming, but at the same time, in the quarterly measurement, they tend to go for what is giving the results here and now. The problem with that is that, again, if I connect it back to millennials and Gen Z, where they are much more value-driven, and they are currently becoming more and more aware, and it's going quite fast, to be honest. When they become aware enough and they realize which brands have taken their responsibility and which one hasn't been taking their responsibility, they will choose the ones who have been taking the responsibility. Because the connection, the brand connection, the relationship that will be it will be based on who took the lead, who did something when they didn't have to do something. So before the legislations that are coming, they need to do that. In terms of creating that customer relationship moving forward. So I think to answer to that question, I think if you're a smart business, you will do that. You will start investing, but it's a really big challenge because one of the challenges within circular economy, shift to circular economy, is the economy part of it. How do you measure success and profit in this new shift and a long-term investment versus short-term. Another thing that I can say that maybe gives you more hope is that there are actually legislations coming. So sooner or later, they will have to do it.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, perhaps we can just take a poll here and see like how many of you in your own businesses are putting out initiatives for sustainability or circular economy. Let's raise our hands and see how many of us are doing that. Okay. There are a few who need to go back and consider this. Okay, thank you, Nina. Thank you for this lovely presentation. Thank you.